I shut the door on the mom who left me behind, ignored me after my dad died, and tried to re-enter my life just to walk me down the aisle. Actually, calling her my mom feels weird because, to be honest, she was more like a stranger than a parent. She took off when I was just a baby. I was too young to even remember her leaving, but what I do remember is how my dad, Mark, picked up all the pieces and did everything he could to raise me alone. He was my real parent. Always was. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't completely cut off from my mom, Sarah. I'd see her every now and then, but it was like a random acquaintance showing up in your life once in a blue moon and pretending they care. The court gave her visitation every other weekend, but she rarely, if ever, followed through. I remember times when I was a little kid, sitting by the window, waiting, thinking maybe she'd show up this time. But nope, she'd either bail or drop me off early because she had other plans. The thing that really bugs me is she didn't even try, not at all. She would quit jobs just to avoid paying child support. My dad busted his ass working long hours while she was out there doing God knows what. Twice, she even ended up in jail because she didn't pay what she owed. Can you imagine? Jail for not wanting to take care of your own kid. I heard about it through the grapevine because she didn't tell me directly. I found out from my uncle. It's messed up, right? Anyway, when I was about 6, Sarah met this guy, Phil. He was older than her, maybe by 10 years. And from what I could gather, he thought he was some kind of hero for saving her, whatever that means. I wasn't really a part of their life. I saw them maybe 5 times from the age of 6 to 14. Yeah, just 5. Every time was the same, awkward, forced, and full of fake smiles. I hated it. They would try to act like we were some happy family, but all I could think was, who are you kidding? Phil though, man, he was something else. He really tried to force himself into my life. I remember one time, I was maybe around 10, and he showed up at one of my school's Father's Day activities. My dad wasn't able to make it that day, but I wasn't mad about it. He always made time for me in other ways, so missing one thing wasn't a big deal. But Phil, being Phil, saw this as his moment. He came up to me like he was some kind of replacement and said, "Hey, Jamie, I can step in if you want. I'm here for you." I remember just staring at him, not knowing whether to laugh or scream, like, "Dude, no, you're not my dad. You're not even close. I barely know you. And you have no right to act like you're stepping in for him." I was polite at the time, just said something like, "I'm fine," and walked away, but inside, I was fuming. I didn't even tell my dad about it because I didn't want him to feel bad. The worst part? Phil would try to make it seem like I was the one missing out. He'd drop these little comments like, "If only your dad had done more for you, maybe you wouldn't feel so distant." Distant. I was close to my dad. He gave me a good life while Sarah didn't give a crap. I finally had enough of his jabs and told him straight up, "Don't talk about my dad. He's better than Sarah will ever be, and he's done more for me than you can even imagine." He never tried that stepdad crap with me again. The only consistent thing about Sarah and Phil was their absence. They had their own family. They had 3 kids together, and I didn't even know their names until much later. I wasn't invited to family gatherings, birthdays, or any of that stuff. It's like they just erased me from their lives as soon as they had their new family. Losing my dad when I was 14 was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. I mean, it felt like my entire world fell apart overnight. One minute we're making dinner plans and talking about me starting high school, and the next he's just gone. A heart attack, just like that. No warning, no nothing. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I remember the day so clearly, the phone call, the panic, the moment when everything froze. My uncles, Pete and Rob, came over right away, but it was like I couldn't hear anything anyone was saying. Everything just became noise. I felt numb, like someone had just ripped my life in half, and I was left with the jagged edges. After the funeral, things moved fast, faster than I was ready for, to be honest. The house where I grew up, the one my dad worked so hard to keep for us, had to be sold. I didn't have much say in it. It wasn't like I had anywhere else to go. My uncles offered to take me in right away, which I'll always be grateful for. They didn't hesitate. Pete and Rob had always been more like older brothers to me than just uncles, so I knew I'd be safe with them. Still, it felt like I was leaving behind everything I had left of my dad. Now, here's the part where my mom and Phil show up again. Surprise, surprise, right? It had been years since I'd seen either of them, and all of a sudden, after my dad's death, they're acting like they care, like they're going to swoop in and be the heroes. Sarah didn't even come to the funeral, not because she was too devastated to show up. Nope, she didn't have time. Can you believe that? No time to bury the man who took care of her kid when she couldn't be bothered. But Phil, oh, he showed up, of course he did. The funeral was over, and I was sitting with my uncles trying to process everything, when Phil walked over to me. I remember looking up at him thinking, "What the hell do you want?" He had that stupid, fake, concerned look on his face, the kind where you know someone's just doing it for show. He sat down next to me and said, "You know, Jamie, you can always come live with Sarah and me. We've got room for you." I just stared at him, not knowing whether to laugh or scream. This guy, who I'd seen maybe 5 times in my whole life, who wasn't even man enough to show up at the funeral with my mom, was offering me a place to live. No thanks, man. I wasn't about to leave my uncles, the only real family I had left, to go live with people who barely knew I existed. I told him no, that I was staying with Pete and Rob, and that was that. Or so I thought. Phil wasn't one to give up so easily though. He went on this whole rant about how family is important, and how your mom and I really want to be there for you now. Now? Where were they when I was a kid, huh? Where were they when I was sitting by the window, waiting for Sarah to show up for her court-ordered weekends? Now they want to be parents? Too little, too late. I shut him down pretty hard after that, told him I didn't need their pity or their help, that my dad had raised me just fine without them, and I wasn't about to let them waltz into my life now just because it was convenient for them. Phil didn't like that. His face got all red, and he started sputtering about how I was just a kid and didn't understand how hard things had been for Sarah. Oh, please. I wasn't about to sit there and let him talk down to me like that, so I said, "Hard for her? My dad's the one who had to pick up the pieces after she ditched me. Don't even try to act like she's the victim here." He stormed off after that, but not before throwing in some passive-aggressive comment about how I'd regret cutting them out of my life. Yeah, sure, like I was going to lose sleep over not having Sarah and Phil around. Please. After that, I packed up my stuff and moved in with Pete and Rob. They were amazing, honestly. I was grieving, but they gave me space to process everything in my own time. They didn't push me to move on or get over it. They let me be angry, sad, confused. Whatever I needed to feel, they let me feel it. That's something I'll always be thankful for. The move itself was weird. Leaving my childhood home, the place where I had all these memories of my dad, was hard. Every room reminded me of him, whether it was the kitchen where we'd cook together or the living room where we'd watch movies every Friday night. It wasn't just a house to me, it was the only place I'd ever felt truly safe. But it was gone now, just like my dad, and there was nothing I could do about it. The first night at Pete and Rob's place, I barely slept. I kept expecting my dad to walk in and tell me everything was going to be okay. But he wasn't there, and it wasn't okay, not by a long shot. I tried to keep myself busy after that, throwing myself into school and anything else that would keep me from thinking too much. But no matter what I did, it always came back to that emptiness, the fact that my dad wasn't there, and he never would be again. You'd think that after everything, Sarah and Phil would just leave me alone, right? Wrong. Phil called a few more times after I moved in with my uncles, trying to reconnect or whatever. He'd say things like, "Jamie, I know you're hurting, but your mom and I want to help you through this." Yeah, because they've been so helpful up until now, right? One time, he even had the audacity to say, "Your mom has changed. She's ready to be there for you now." Ready now? Now that my dad was gone? Now that they didn't have to worry about dealing with him? I told him flat out, I don't need her now. I needed her when I was a kid, and she wasn't there. It's too late. After that, I stopped answering his calls. I didn't want anything to do with either of them. They had their life, their perfect little family with their 3 kids, and I had mine with my uncles. I didn't need Sarah or Phil pretending to care when it was clear they didn't. Honestly, life with Pete and Rob was good. It wasn't perfect, nothing could replace my dad, but it was stable. They supported me in ways that Sarah and Phil never could. They showed up for me. They were there, and that's all I ever really needed. By the time I was 27, I thought I had everything figured out when it came to my so-called family. I'd gotten pretty good at keeping my distance from Sarah and Phil, only dealing with them when it was absolutely necessary. The rest of Sarah's side of the family, I didn't have any real issues with. I wasn't super close to them or anything, but they didn't try to force the whole family thing on me like Sarah and Phil did. So I figured it was fine to stay in touch. They were still part of my life, just on the outskirts, you know. So, when my grandparents on Sarah's side invited me to this family birthday party, I didn't think twice about going. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic, just a regular family thing. Show up, say hi, eat some cake, make small talk, then dip out. Pretty standard. Matt, my fiancé, couldn't make it because he had work, so I figured I'd just go alone, say my hellos and get out. But of course nothing's ever that simple with Sarah and Phil involved. When I got to the party, everything seemed normal at first. My grandparents were happy to see me, and I chatted with a few cousins and aunts. It was chill, nothing weird. I spotted Sarah and Phil across the room, but I didn't go up to them. I didn't see the point. They knew where I stood, and I wasn't about to make things awkward by pretending we were close. So, I stuck to the people I was comfortable with, keeping my distance. But apparently Phil had other plans. I was standing by the food table, grabbing a slice of cake, when I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. I turned around, and there he was. Phil. Right there with that same fake, overly friendly smile he always had. I internally sighed because I knew this was going to be annoying. "Jamie, good to see you," he said, like we were old pals. I forced a small smile, mostly out of politeness, and said, "Hey, Phil." I didn't want to be rude in front of everyone, but I was already mentally preparing myself for whatever crap he was about to start. He wasted no time getting to the point. "So, I heard you're engaged?" "That's exciting news," he said, still with that fake smile. I nodded, trying to keep it short. "Yeah, thanks. I was hoping he'd just leave it at that, but of course that's not how Phil operates. You know, Sarah and I were kind of surprised we didn't get an invite to the engagement party," he said, lowering his voice like he was trying to be all serious. "I mean, we're your family. I figured we'd be included." I could feel my jaw clench, but I kept it together. I wasn't about to make a scene at a birthday party. It wasn't a big party, just close family and friends, I said, trying to keep things as neutral as possible. But I could already see where this was going, and it wasn't going to be good. Phil didn't back down. He never does. "Well, we are family, Jamie. Sarah and I have always considered you part of our family, and we were hurt not to be invited. We care about you, you know." That's when I felt my blood start to boil. Care about me? They had the nerve to say they cared? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Phil, I think we both know why you weren't invited. Let's not pretend like we're close." I could see the smile fading from his face. He wasn't expecting me to call him out, but I wasn't going to let him get away with playing the concerned parent card. He looked around, like he was making sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. "Look, Jamie, I've always tried to be there for you, and I think it's time we move past whatever issues we've had. I know your mom wasn't perfect, but I've always considered you my daughter. I'd like to walk you down the aisle if you'll let me." I swear, time stopped for a second when he said that. Walk me down the aisle? This guy, the man who wasn't even around when I needed someone? The audacity. I felt my hands start to shake, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "Are you kidding me right now?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. A few people nearby turned to look, but I didn't care. "You've always considered me your daughter? Phil, I barely know you. You think just because you married my mom you're suddenly my dad? My dad is dead. He's the one who should be walking me down the aisle, but he can't because he's gone. And you have no right to act like you're some kind of replacement." Phil's face turned red. He wasn't expecting me to lash out like that, but I was done holding back. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he said, trying to sound calm, but I could tell he was pissed. "I've done my best to be a father figure to you, but you've never given me a chance. Your dad didn't do everything right, you know? He kept you away from us, and I think that's why you're so angry." Oh, that was it. That was the last straw. "Don't you dare talk about my dad," I snapped, stepping closer to him. "He did everything for me while Sarah was too busy running away from her responsibilities. You have no idea what it was like for him, raising me alone while she bailed. And now you want to come in and act like you're better than him? Like you deserve to take his place? Get over yourself, Phil." The whole room had gone quiet by now. Everyone was staring, but I didn't care. I was done pretending. Phil just stood there looking stunned, like he didn't know what to say. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, and finally he muttered, "You're being disrespectful. You need to be more grateful for the people who care about you." That's when I lost it. "Grateful," I said. "Grateful for what? You weren't there, Phil. Sarah wasn't there. None of you were there when I needed someone. My dad was the only one who cared, and now you want me to be grateful to you? You're nothing to me. Nothing." With that, I turned and walked out. I didn't wait for him to respond. I didn't care. I could hear whispers and feel the stares of everyone in the room, but it didn't matter. I was done with the whole thing. Done with Phil, done with Sarah, done with pretending like they were anything more than strangers. Later that night, I got a text from one of my aunts saying I shouldn't have made a scene, that I embarrassed Phil and Sarah in front of everyone. But, honestly, I don't regret it. They wanted to play family, but they don't get to pick and choose when they're there for me. They had years to step up, and they didn't. So, no, I'm not sorry, and I sure as hell don't need them at my wedding. Update 1. After the whole showdown at the party, I thought that would be it. I figured I made my point loud and clear and they'd back off. But nah, of course not. The text started rolling in that night, and I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. First, it was my Aunt Carol. She's one of those peacekeepers, you know, always trying to smooth things over, make everyone happy. She sent me this long message about how I shouldn't have publicly humiliated Phil and Sarah at the party. You know they're trying, Jamie, she wrote. Phil's always seen you as his daughter. You didn't have to embarrass him like that in front of everyone. I stared at the text for a solid minute, just shaking my head. Trying? They've had my whole life to try. I wasn't about to feel bad for standing up for myself after everything. So, I shot back a reply. If they actually cared, they wouldn't have waited until now to act like it. I'm not playing nice just to make them feel better about the crap they put me through. I didn't get a response from her after that. But then, the real kicker came the next morning when I got a call from Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her directly and, honestly, I couldn't even remember the last time, maybe a year, probably more. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious what she had to say after everything. Jamie, we need to talk, she started, her voice all stiff and formal, like she was about to give me a lecture. I sighed, already regretting answering the phone. What do you want, Sarah? I heard what happened at the party, she said, like she wasn't even there, and I have to say, I'm really disappointed in you. You didn't have to lash out at Phil like that. He's only ever tried to help. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Help? Are you serious right now? The only time Phil's ever tried to help is when it's convenient for him. He thinks just because he married you, he can waltz into my life and pretend to be my dad. He's not, and he never will be. She went quiet for a second, and I could tell she didn't like being called out. But then she did what she always does. Shifted the blame. You know, this attitude of yours isn't going to get you anywhere. You can't keep holding on to the past forever, Jamie. Your father isn't here anymore. Phil and I are. I felt a surge of anger so strong I had to bite my tongue for a second before I said something I couldn't take back. But I was done playing nice. Yeah, you're here now, Sarah. Where were you when I was a kid, when I actually needed you? Don't act like showing up now makes up for everything you did, or didn't do. She sighed, that kind of annoyed sigh she used to do when I was a kid. Like I was being difficult for no reason. I know I made mistakes, Jamie, but it wasn't easy for me either. I did the best I could. The best you could? I cut her off. The best you could do was leave me with Dad and barely show up for your weekends. You didn't even try. You weren't there, Sarah, so don't stand there and tell me you did your best. There was another long pause, and I could hear her struggling to find something to say. Finally she went with, I'm your mother, Jamie. You don't get to talk to me like this. I couldn't help it, I laughed again. But this time, it wasn't because it was funny, it was just ridiculous. You're my mother? Really? You think that title means something just because you gave birth to me? You lost the right to that a long time ago. You weren't a mother then, and you're not one now. That must have hit a nerve because her voice got all sharp and defensive. You need to stop living in the past. You're going to regret cutting us out of your life, Jamie. Phil's only ever wanted to help you, and you're throwing it back in his face. At that point, I was done. Done with the guilt trips, done with her excuses, done with her trying to make me the bad guy. No, Sarah, the only thing I regret is wasting my time thinking you'd ever care. Don't call me again. And with that, I hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at my phone, trying to process everything. Part of me was pissed. Pissed that she still didn't get it. Pissed that she was trying to make me feel like the villain in this whole thing. But another part of me felt free, like a weight I'd been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, nothing. But, of course, it didn't stop there. Later that day, my cousin Brianna called. She's closer to my age, and we'd always gotten along fine, so I figured maybe this call would be different. But nope. Jamie, I heard what happened. Are you okay? She started. It seemed genuine enough, so I let my guard down a little. Yeah, I'm fine. It's just, they don't get it. They never will. Brianna sighed, and I could already tell where this was going. I get that you're upset, but don't you think you were a little harsh? Phil's been trying, and Sarah, well, she's still your mom, you know. I groaned. Not you too, Brianna. I don't want to hear it. They didn't try. They didn't show up for me when it mattered. and now they think they can just waltz back in and play family. It doesn't work like that. I know, she said, trying to sound understanding, but they're still family. Maybe you could just, I don't know, meet them halfway? I could feel my patience wearing thin. Meet them halfway? How about they meet me halfway for once in their lives? I'm done bending over backward to make them feel better about what they did. Brianna went quiet, and after a few awkward seconds, she just said, "Okay, I get it. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I didn't want to be mad at her, it wasn't her fault. But I was tired of everyone making excuses for Sarah and Phil. Tired of people acting like I was the one who needed to fix things when they were the ones who broke it." That night, I sat down with Matt and told him everything that had happened. He listened, like he always does, and just said, "You don't owe them anything, Jamie. You've done more than enough. It's okay to let go." And that's when I realized he was right. I didn't need to keep carrying this weight anymore. I didn't need their validation, their approval, or their version of family. I had my own life now, my own future to build with people who actually cared about me. So, I blocked Sarah and Phil's numbers, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally breathe. Update 2. I thought that after blocking Sarah and Phil, things would calm down, that I'd get some peace, and they'd finally get the hint. But, of course, they didn't. I should have known better. Instead, they took things up a notch. I wasn't answering their calls or texts, so Phil decided the next best thing was to show up at my apartment. Yeah, you read that right. The guy literally showed up at my front door, unannounced, like we were close or something. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was just hanging out trying to enjoy a quiet weekend. Matt was out running errands, and I was catching up on some stuff at home. I heard a knock at the door, and I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was probably just a package or a neighbor. But when I opened the door, there was Phil, standing there like he belonged. I stared at him, speechless for a second. "What are you doing here?" I finally asked, not even trying to hide the irritation in my voice. "We need to talk," he said, all serious, like this was some kind of intervention or something. "You've been ignoring us, and that's not fair. We deserve a chance to explain ourselves." I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway. "I've heard all your excuses, Phil. There's nothing left to explain." He looked frustrated, like he couldn't believe I wasn't just letting him in. "Jamie, this has gone on long enough. Your mom and I want to fix this. We're your family, and you're shutting us out." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was just so typical of him. "Family? You don't get to show up now and act like you've been family all these years. Where were you when I was growing up? Where was Sarah? You can't just ignore someone for half their life and then show up when it's convenient." Phil stepped forward, trying to inch his way into the apartment, but I wasn't budging. "We didn't ignore you. Your dad—" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Don't you dare bring my dad into this. He was there for me every single day while Sarah bailed on me. You've got no right to speak about him." I could see his face getting red, and I knew I hit a nerve, but I didn't care. I was done holding back. "I'm just saying," he started, clearly trying to keep his cool, "your dad didn't make things easy for us. He never let us get close to you." I felt my blood boil at that. "Are you kidding me? My dad didn't make things hard. Sarah didn't even try, and you're just as bad. You showed up a handful of times and acted like you were doing me a favor. Don't stand here and pretend like you've been some kind of father figure to me. You weren't there." Phil's face hardened, and I could see he was getting angry now. "You need to stop living in the past, Jamie. You're an adult now. You can't keep blaming your mom and me for what happened years ago." "Oh, trust me, I'm not living in the past," I shot back. "But I'm not about to pretend like you and Sarah have changed just because you're suddenly interested in playing happy families. You can't rewrite history to make yourselves feel better." Phil let out a frustrated sigh and ran his hand through his hair. "We've been trying, Jamie. We've been trying to make things right, but you keep pushing us away. You're going to regret cutting us out like this." And there it was, the guilt trip, the same one Sarah tried to pull. It was like they'd rehearsed this or something. But I wasn't falling for it. "Regret?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What exactly am I supposed to regret? Cutting out the people who weren't there when I needed them? Letting go of people who only show up when it suits them? No, Phil. The only thing I regret is letting you and Sarah back into my life at all." He just stood there, staring at me, like I was some ungrateful kid who didn't appreciate what he was offering. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low and cold. "You're going to realize one day that you need us." I shook my head, completely done with this conversation. "No, Phil, I don't need you. I never did." And with that, I stepped back and slammed the door in his face. For a second, I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe it had come to this, but at the same time, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free of all the guilt, all the pressure, all the fake family nonsense that Sarah and Phil had been trying to push on me. Of course, it didn't end there. I heard him knock again, this time louder. "Jamie, open the door," he called through the door, his voice angrier now. "We're not done." But we were done, as far as I was concerned. We were more than done. I didn't even bother responding. I just walked away from the door and sat down on the couch, turning up the TV to drown out the sound of his knocking. After a few minutes, he finally gave up and left. Later that night, I got a message from Sarah. It was short and passive-aggressive. "Just like I expected, I heard what you did. You'll regret this." I didn't even bother replying. I deleted the message and blocked her number again, this time for good. When Matt came home and I told him what happened, he just shook his head. "I can't believe they still don't get it," he said. "You've been more than fair with them." "Yeah, well, they're never going to get it," I said, "and I'm done trying to make them understand." And that was it. That was the moment I realized I didn't owe them anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, not even a conversation. They had years to be there for me, and they chose not to. So now I was choosing to live my life without them, and for the first time I felt okay with that.